Dr. Jazz.
Asaf was our contact now, so thanks, Asaf.
Yes, great.
By the way.
Wonderful. Thank you, Asaf. Yeah.
And you guys toured with Soft Machine again,
Yes.
I don't know how many times already. But my first question that I want to start is how do you guys keep it fresh, especially you as a guitar player, a musician?
Well,
that it's
that's
interesting after all these years, the touring and the playing.
Well, I'll tell you, one of the things that keeps things fresh for me is that I do all sorts of different things. And when I play with the Soft Machine, the way I play with the Soft Machine is somehow the way it comes out with Soft Machine is quite different from the way it comes out with other people. And I don't know if that's the sort of spirit of the band, the spirit of the vibe of Soft Machine, but I really enjoy it. I mean, it really is my favorite. I'd say it's my favorite band that I do. Really, I mean, I mean, we reformed in 2004 with Elton Dean, John Marshall, Hugh Hopper, and myself. And Elton died, Hugh died, John Marshall's retired. He's on our latest album, which is coming out, Other Doors, which will be out in a month.
Oh,
and Asaf has finally. Yes, but that's with John Marshall, and Roy Babington's on it as well.
Oh, fantastic.
On a couple of tracks, and so now Asaf is the permanent replacement for John, because John for years would sort of play about 50% of the gigs because he's not very well, and drumming is a hard
especially in your
tough
music,
thing. Tougher than guitar. Playing guitar, I can make my action lower and lower and and turn up the gain on my amp more and more and more. But when you're drums, and John played, we did a sort of, turned out, I had a feeling that it would be a sort of farewell concert with him at Ronnie Scott's last June. And then he managed the recording, and he plays very well on the recording. And then after that, he said, well, that's it, I'm afraid. So he's on the recording, and then Asaf has taken over, and we have Fred Baker on bass. But to answer your question, I mean, I no band I'm in. I mean, Soft Machine is my main band, but there's no band I'm in that overworks. That's the other thing.
Yeah, that's important.
So when we do a gig, it's always quite special. Any gig I do with anybody is usually quite special because you haven't done that many of them. So I don't find that a problem. I think probably if you played the same repertoire over and over and over and over and over, you'd find it to be a bit of a problem. But I don't. And we have got quite a lot of touring in October and November. But at the moment, for instance, tomorrow night I'm doing a sort of jazz concert with a veteran saxophone player called Art Theme. And then I've got 2 solo gigs.
Oh, beautiful.
Which I like doing. And then up north for a trio gig with a trio that I play with in the north of England. So, and then next week we've got a Soft Machine gig in Leeds. And so there's lots of stuff. Yeah. So I don't get stale. That's the point. That's the point of your question. I've been 53 years as a professional musician.
Whoa, man.
Which is a long time.
Yeah.
Yeah, I started in 1970. So and I'm just really involved in the guitar, really. I mean, that's the thing.
Yeah.
So guitar is my thing, and I just the way I play with the Soft Machine is, I think, probably my favorite of my, I mean, I always play myself, but somehow something comes out with the Soft Machine that is really I like.
Interesting. Yeah, I like you. Like also, in many other contexts, like. Especially, that one with John and Arild, that's my favorite of you. That's like one of the best records in-house.
Oh, great. Oh, lovely. Yeah, so that's great.
I love that side of you.
Lovely.
It's
yeah. Well, that's kind of, sorry, go on.
No, I mean, obviously for you, Soft Machine has been like such a long going thing, of course, it's different, I guess.
Yeah. No, I love that trio with John, with Arild. I mean, it's almost now sort of ancient history. I mean, it's obviously with John being like that, it's not going to happen again. And Arild is also, you know, he's a certain point. And but we did quite a lot of that album. I think came out what, 07, 08, something like that. We did quite a lot of gigs, and it's fantastic playing with those two. I mean, John was still really playing fantastically well, and Arild, such a powerhouse.
Man,
and
we toured with Arild last year.
Did you?
Yeah, we made an album and with Bob Moses, the drummer, and we had a 3-week tour.
Right.
And Arild is still, man, he's burning on the bass. Still.
He's totally burning, isn't he?
Yeah,
you know,
man,
totally burning. I mean, I was amazed when we first started playing. It's like the Viking, the whole, you know, it's fantastic. I'd love to play with him again. Actually, I mean, it'd be brilliant.
How did you guys hook up? Actually,
you know, he was fantastic.
Well,
we should. I mean, yeah. I mean, we should. You know, I mean, it's like, you know, I hate to say it, but it's a kind of bit of an age thing. You start, you know, these sort of things that, you know, you're a young man. You sort of, you have the energy to hook these things up. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
I mean, if somebody hooked it up.
Yeah.
But back in the day, I did it really. John Marshall and I did it, and I'd get Arild over and be responsible for taking him around and things, and that's fine. But now, if somebody hooked it up, I mean, the way the Soft Machines came back together was Leonardo Pavkovic. Hooked it up.
Ramunjun, yeah, okay.
Yes, he's totally hooked it up, and we had one very unsatisfactory kind of idea around 1990. To do something, and we had a sort of meeting, and it was Elton, myself, John Marshall, and I think we were going to have Dill Caps on bass. Nothing really happened. It didn't gel, you know. And then Leonardo said, "Well, this is going to happen," you know. And the idea of Elton Dean, John Marshall, Hugh Hopper, and myself, all four, sort of getting on, was probably something in the 70s that wouldn't have happened, but it did happen when we got together, and everybody was quite happy to be together, and it worked. And that was because of Leonardo. Really, it wouldn't have happened without Leonardo. He basically put it together. And you know, the Arild thing came about because they had a trio with Vasilis, the pianist,
and John,
he left.
Exactly.
And he left. So John phoned me and said, "Well, you know, would you like to do the thing with me and Arild?" And I thought, well, that's fantastic, you know. So we did some great gigs, and as I say, the recording, it came out really good.
Oh, it's beautiful.
And so I'm very, very pleased with that. And you've reminded me of it, really. And I would love to do it again. Yeah, you give me an idea. I'll get a hold of Arild and say, "Come on, man, come over."
I'll send Arild after this an email. John will email you again.
Yeah. No, I'd love to play with Arild again. It'd be brilliant. I might be able to persuade Ronnie Scott's to put it on, actually.
Wow, that'd be beautiful.
You know, something I could pitch to them. Anyway, that's a thought. Lovely thought.
Yeah, but you know, you mentioned the trio. I mean, I mentioned this trio, and you wrote some beautiful music also for that record with Arild, and composing for Soft Machine and various.
Yes.
Like, how does the composition process for you go in general, and how did it work in Soft Machine as well? Like, how did you guys bring in compositions? And like, basically, two questions.
You mean? Okay, two questions. The first question I have to you is, you mean recent Soft Machine or Soft Machine in the 70s?
I mean, in general, like, how does the composition process go for you? Like,
well,
you sit down on the guitar? Or...
Yeah, well, the thing is, it turns out I do have a lot of compositions published, but I don't think of myself a composer at all.
Oh, wow.
I'm a guitar player and an improviser. That's my passion, you know.
Okay.
And I do compose. Usually I compose when it's required.
Like all of us, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, well, I suppose. Okay, like everybody. Yeah. Well, there are some people dedicated composers who write stuff, you know. I mean, you're probably the same. We play the guitar, right? and that's what we do. And whereas some people would sit down and say, well, today I'm going to write a composition. Yeah. So I'm not a composer in that sense, but I don't know what it's like for you, but for me, it definitely comes with the guitar in hand. And I find the same thing that most people find is the first idea is easy, and then trying to put it together and get some other bits that fit. I quite enjoy it, but it's not my favorite occupation. It's something that causes not exactly headaches, but all the way through my career from 1972, 73 onwards, I've produced 2 or 3 tracks for the albums I've been on, like with Darrell Ways Wolf, Soft Machine. Carl Jenkins basically monopolized the compositions, but I do usually a guitar composition, and then there's always been a tune or two that I've written for the albums I've been on, a lot of them, and so I'd say that is the way it goes. A nice idea will present itself, and then the difficult thing is rounding it into. But I mean, there are various ways that improvisers do compose. I mean, Joe Zawinul, for instance, used to just play, record himself, and take a bit that sounded good. I mean, that's probably a very good way of doing it. But then he was more of a proper composer, you know. As I say, I am surprised. I was made a sort of full-time member of the British PRS, which you only do if you I don't think it's about money generating, it's number of compositions you've got registered with them. And I think I've got about 250 compositions.
Whoa,
registered.
That's a lot. Wow. Well,
it is. But I've done what we call library music, which is like music for TV and film, incidental music. And that sort of gets used. And so yeah, but as I say, it's how you think of yourself. I mean, Carl Jenkins always thought of himself as a composer. And when I was in the Soft Machine, he started playing less and less and less and less, because he just sort of basically said, I'm the composer, I'm not a player. So I'm a player, not a composer. And that's my main focus, is playing the guitar. And that's in all. And I'm interested in guitar in all, all its guises. I was just sitting having breakfast in one of my local cafes, and this guy next to me said, oh, do you know the guitarist from Red Hot Chili Peppers? I love him, you've got to listen to this, you've got to listen to that. And I went, well, I will listen, because that's really interesting, because I probably don't listen enough, like all of us who are working. I mean, when you meet a fan, somebody who really loves the particular brand of music he loves, they really love it, they love it. So he was going on and on and on. You've got to write this down. You've got to listen to Red Hot Chili Peppers guitar player, whatever his name is, and you've got to listen to it. And I'm going, all right, him. Yeah, so, you've got to listen to. And I should know these things, and I don't. I mean, I know a lot about the guitarists in my world, which you call sort of jazz fusion world. But I'm very interested to hear anything on guitar. I'm interested in anything I would want to have a listen to, because that's what I'm interested in. I don't think if it wasn't for the guitar, I wouldn't be a musician. That's the truth. Because I met, when I met people like Clapton and Hendrix and knew them a bit in the 60s, and they were very nice to me, and I was so completely blown away by those people.
How did you meet those? I mean, obviously you grew up in England.
I grew up in England, and I mean, these stories are good because the people who, just as a digression, I watched yesterday a documentary about Brian Jones, made by somebody actually as a friend of mine, Nick Broomfield, and in the write-up it said, well, this is probably the last documentary that we made by somebody who knew the Stones and was around at the time. So I was around at the time, and I can tell you that I can tell you exactly what happened to the guitar. I mean, it was, and and because I was there, I can say this with authority. I don't pass opinions with authority normally, but I was actually there, and I was playing, and I was a Django Reinhardt fan, and I also was quite into me and my friend, we're talking about 1963, 64. Wow. We'd try and play the Django stuff. I was also somewhat of a fan of people like Buddy Guy, but so I had the bands I was playing in. Obviously, we didn't play the Django stuff in the band. We played sort of R&B. So the school band I had started off as a sort of Beatles band, but then we got into kind of playing R&B, and the state-of-the-art guitar was kind of Chuck Berry-ish, Brian Jones on the first Stones album, Dave Davis on You Really Got Me. That was the state-of-the-art. That was the most advanced guitar solo in 1964 was Dave Davis on You Really Got Me.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sure, man. That's
good. I went to London to try and get some examination results, and I was at a little place in Notting Hill Gate studying, not studying, wasting time playing the guitar. And I met this guy there, and he said, "Oh, have you heard Eric Clapton?" And I went, "Oh yeah, I know Eric Clapton with 5 Live Yardbirds. Yeah, he's okay, he's good." He said, "You should hear him now." And I went, "Oh yeah." Because I was, I had a good feeling about myself. I was quite good. And, playing this Django stuff and everything. And he said, "You should hear him now." I went, "Really? Okay, all right." And I tell you, I went to and it was John Mayall's Blues Breakers, and I went to the Manor House pub in Finsbury Park, and they were playing. And it was unbelievable. Unbelievable. I have to tell you this because nobody believes this because of what Eric Clapton's like now. This was a complete mind-blowing change of the whole guitar world.
Wow.
Just like that. That was the Les Paul, the Marshall Blues Breaker, the Marshall 45 Blues Breaker combo. Well, they didn't call it Blues Breaker then. It was a Marshall 45 JP 45. And I knew where it was derived from because I was 17 and I knew what was going on. It was derived from the blues players, but it was a completely different thing in the sense of sound. And it was the first bloke who I heard make the guitar sing. So I walked in and he's sort of going, I thought, what is this? This sort of singing tone and incredible. And everybody was mesmerized. Totally mesmerized in a way that can only happen in a sort of pre-computer society. I mean, it was just word of mouth. Yeah. And people would say, "Have you heard that? Have you heard that?" And everybody go, "What the hell?" And we were just absolutely devastated. And so for a year, he was like, Clapton is God. He was absolutely God. I mean, much more of a God than anybody else who came later, because there was no question. It was only Clapton. I mean, I remember poor old Mike Bloomfield playing with the Paul Butterfield Blues Band. Okay, he had a little cachet in around August 1965, playing the Telecaster, back pickup of the Telecaster. Good playing. But I mean, he was devastated when he heard Clapton. I mean, he was absolutely devastated. He was devastated beyond belief. He could hardly play after he heard that. So we're all going, what? And you know what did my head in? I saw this, and I've seen Pat Metheny express this as far as Wes Montgomery goes. I saw this and I thought, this is so great. I mustn't copy it. I mustn't try and copy it. I must use this as an inspiration to try and find my own way, right? And within 6 months, a year, everybody was copying it. Every single mother bastard in London was copying this and pretending they weren't. That was what really was. Charlie Mingus had a song called "If Charlie Parker Had a Machine Gun, There'd Be a Lot of Dead Copycats." Well, if Eric had a machine, well, of course he's not his character, but honestly, everybody got those Les Pauls. Those Les Pauls went from being £75, nobody wanted them, to within 2 or 3 years, they were 300 quid, which in those days was an enormous amount of money within 2 years. So everybody started doing it. And the reason why I go on about it is because I was there.
It's beautiful. Yeah,
I think
beautiful.
it's so unfair that everybody dismisses Clapton. Oh, Clapton. You know, there's another Eric Clapton who emerged in the 1970s. Well, that's not the same person. That is another human being. There's another person, you know, and I think he's got value, but it's another person. That guy in 1965 and 1966, I can tell you, it was just unbelievable. And the only reason Jimi Hendrix came to England, because he said to Chas Chandler, will you introduce me to Eric Clapton?
Wow.
And so Chas Chandler said, oh, you can meet them all. Jeff Beck, he said, I want to meet Eric Clapton. And so you can't underestimate, you can't overestimate. You can't overestimate the incredible impact. And anyway, so then I happened to, I was coming out of my little college, and standing by Notting Hill Gate Station was Eric, staring out, alone, staring out at the traffic. Right? So I was just freaked out and ran past, going, oh my God. And then next day, there he was again. So I stopped and went, this is 1965, remember? And I stopped and went, oh, Eric. He went, yeah, man. I said, are you going to go to Chicago? And he went, yeah, I might, man. It's like my spiritual home, you know. And he was very, very unexpressive face, which he's still got. And I think that's one of the issues with him. People always say he looks bored. It's just his face doesn't. And so we had this sort of, you know, he's obviously going, and I said, oh, are you into jazz? He said, no, I don't like jazz. It's clinical, he said. And I said, and he did mention one name that he liked. I can't remember. I thought it was Jim Hall, but I'm not sure. Anyway, so I scuttled off, and I told the drummer in our band that I'd seen Eric. I've seen God. I've seen God standing at Notting Hill Gate Tube Station. God is there. So he rushed round the next day, and he was much more self-confident. So he started chatting up Eric and talking to him, blah, 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 and going on about our band and telling him about our band. So the first thing that happened was, I'm trying to get this in the right order. I know about 6 months later, this drummer, our drummer, pushed himself into the Speakeasy Club, which was the club where everybody, Jimi Hendrix arrived in September 66. So Jimmy had arrived, and our drummer was down the Speakeasy, and before this, he got Eric to come down and jam with our band. Because I remember Eric turned up with his afro. So this must have been about when first Cream gig was August 66. So I reckon around September 66 or after. It was after Jimmy arrived, because Eric went all afro when Jimmy arrived. So it would probably be about December 66. Eric came down and had a play with our band. And this was incredible, you know. I mean, unbelievable that that our drummer was so pushy. So he got Eric to come down and have a jam with our band. And I was doing this sort of, well, I certainly wasn't playing like him. I was doing a kind of what you might call a sort of early fusion-y thing. I mean, I was doing a few lines and a little bit, and he really liked it, actually, you know. He really, because when the drummer drove him back, he said, oh, yeah, I like that guitar player. It's really good. It's interesting. It's great. You know, great what he's doing. It's different, and etc. But I remember he sat in on my guitar, and he picked up my guitar and played a tune. And I remember the sound and the touch compared to me. It was just so, I mean, Eric Clapton had beautiful sense of rhythm. And that's never left. Ever. So much he doesn't do that he did. but his sense of his time is immaculate. Now, many drummers have said this to me. His time is immaculate. Anyway, it was beautiful. And then our drummer got down to speakeasy, and Jimmy was there. This would be about January '67. Hey Joe had come out, but Hendrix was around, and he went up to Jimmy and said, there was a band playing, and he said, this band is crap, Jimmy. Our band is fantastic. You should hear us. So the manager, Jimmy went and spoke to the manager. Hendrix went and spoke to the manager, and the manager said, yeah, you guys can play half an hour on Sunday, the opening act, you know. I can't remember who the main band was, but we were just kids, you know. So we turned up to play, and we had dinner with Jimmy, and I thought for some reason it's an unforgettable moment where he came and sat with us to have dinner, and Are You Experienced, the album had just come out, and I think everybody will agree that the guitar sound on Are You Experienced is not as good as the sound he got live, which Electric Ladyland, they captured it. So I said, oh Jimmy, yeah, the album's great album, but my guitar sound is not. And he went, oh man, it was like
you said
I was
that.
a sort of snotty kid giving my opinions, you know. Oh. Anyway, he didn't obviously hold it against me because we played, and he was lovely. He came over, he sought me out. You know, I was sort of hiding in the corner after we played, all embarrassed because we played 2 or 3 tunes quite well. Then it all fell apart a bit. I was sort of hiding in there. He came over and sort of came over to me and sought me out and said, oh man, that was great, you know, it was great what you were doing, it was fantastic, you know. So it was very encouraging, you know. So both those guys were very nice to me, and probably I wouldn't have done it. Nevertheless, I did then abandon the band and went off to university, which was very odd. I mean, I think I was trying to please my parents, so I went to university. And so I was away from 67 to 70. And when I came back, luckily the scene was still going. In fact, I think when I got back, it was better for me because everybody was totally fed up with the Eric Clapton thing. Everybody had got that down. Everybody. I used to go to auditions, and there'd be 15 guitar players, right? And before me, there'd be 7 or 8 guys going, you know, with a more or less beautiful sound, you know, and the only variation was whether their sound was slightly better than the bloke before, and then I'd come on and do my thing, and they'd be so relieved that somebody was playing something slightly different that I got a lot of gigs that way. And so when I came down in 1970, I think it was good. I think if I'd stayed 67, 68, I'd have had to play kind of like Eric, you know, sort of, or Jimmy. But mainly Eric. See, I really see Django Reinhardt and Jimi Hendrix, and then Charlie Christian and Eric Clapton. Okay, so Django Reinhardt and Jimi Hendrix are the great virtuosi. But, you know, if people copy them, you can hear them copy them. I mean, you know, all the gypsies sound like Django. People copy Hendrix. It's like you're a Hendrix copyist.
John Frusciante, you mentioned
Charlie
him.
Christian, Charlie Christian, Chuck Berry and Clapton were like amazing influences, and their influence becomes everywhere. Look at Chuck Berry, you know, every time, you know, Keith Richards goes chunk, that's Chuck Berry, comes from Chuck Berry. Every jazz guitarist comes from Charlie Christian.
Definitely. And
pretty well every rock guitarist except for Steve Howe, Albert Lee, Robert Fripp. I mean, there were very few who didn't come out of Clapton.
Yeah.
And his influence was universal on the 60s scene, absolutely universal. And so much so that, of course, the tragedy of the universal influence is when you hear them later on, you go, which sounds like everybody else.
Exactly.
I mean, my dad's saying that. My dad was a jazz musician, and he said that about Louis Armstrong. He said, Louis Armstrong just sounds like an average trumpeter. I go, yeah, but he invented it. He started it. He started it. There must be some credit for starting the bloody thing, even if people sound better than you 3 years later, you know. And that always gets my people go, well, I much prefer Peter Green. I said, well, you're allowed to prefer Peter Green, but Peter Green is completely I mean, he put his own spin on it, but he's completely from Clapton. And as he admitted, you know, I saw a program, he admitted, he said, basically, I was just copying Eric. So anyway, so that was very encouraging for me. And so when I came back in 1970, I did, you know, I played with lots and lots of bands playing this sort of, and then I started getting, I mean, I was really got into John McLaughlin.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you that,
then
because sometimes Extrapolation came out then, right? I mean, that's one of the best jazz records for me ever. Like, even now, if we put it on, it's so fresh. Even now, like 53 years, it's just like the best McLaughlin for me. You know, I'm a big fan, but like,
absolutely,
that record, Jesus, the tunes, everything. Yeah,
exactly. I mean, basically, what happened to me during that period, 67 to 70, I mean, Extrapolation was a complete revelation, because I was, frankly, not a particularly jazz guitar bloke, not modern jazz guitar. You know, I like Wares, of course, we like Wares, but the whole Tal Farlow thing and all that, at the time, I wasn't interested. And when Extrapolation came out, and it was a proper jazz album, I went, wow, this is jazz with cojones, you know.
Exactly.
I thought, this is incredible, even though the guitar's pretty rough, but it's got such a vibe, you know. What an incredible album. And that and Miles Davis's In a Silent Way were the things that put me back right into the jazz kind of world, as it were. So in a nutshell, I think what we were trying to do, and there were quite a few of us at the time, I think independently, trying to put these things together, the kind of rock sound with the jazz thing. I mean, McLaughlin, I guess, was a pioneer in that area, but the first bloke I heard doing something where I went, oh my God, was a guy called Ollie Halsall. Do you know Ollie Halsall? No. Okay.
Check him out.
Ollie Halsall in a band called Pato. Now, when we finish the interview, go and listen to a track called Give It All Away by Pato. It's March 1971.
Cool. I'll write it down.
And he was the first bloke I heard doing like really fast legato runs.
Really? Wow. Okay.
And I thought, oh my God, as soon as I heard it, I thought, because I was in the Django Reinhardt McLaughlin thing and I was picking everything, you know, pick.
Sure.
And I thought, I never even, you know, I listened to it and I thought, oh, bloody hell, it was you must listen to that solo. It's fantastic. And it's the best one of him on record. But, you know, I used to go and see them live, and he had a fantastic sound, overdrive sound. So it was really the first time I'd heard a sort of fusion of sort of, he wasn't very academic, but it was a lovely sound with this sort of fluency and the kind of rock sound. And that's the first time I heard that. And then, of course, a year or so later, I heard Alan, you know.
How was that like for you? What happened when Alan came to the scene? I mean, for me, he's like, if Clapton is God, for me, Alan is God, obviously, you know, like.
But that was, he became, I think, you know, the thing about Alan, I think he was quite a late developer. I mean, I remember the first time I was playing a track to somebody said, oh, this guitarist's been listening to Ollie, but he wasn't. He was, it was a parallel development. And of course, the thing about Ollie Halsall was he sort of blew up, and he was a crazy character. And Alan was actually really in one area very steady. He steadily researched, and he stayed in the same kind of, you know, he's one of those guys who stayed in the same area. I mean, it's in the end, it's all to do with your personality. And he had what you might call a sort of, if you like, a sort of mono personality. In other words, the way he played just got more and more and more refined and detailed. And he had his area, which was incredible, but quite narrow, but an incredible area. And so I mean, Ollie Halsall was a big deal for about a year. In fact, really, I suppose Alan is like Hendrix to Clapton, you know. Alan is like Hendrix, and Ollie is like Eric Clapton, because Ollie was, I mean, by this time there were loads of great guitar players around, so it wasn't like everybody's talking about Ollie Halsall, but my little area, that sort of jazz, proto-jazz fusion area, we were really taken with Ollie Halsall. And then I saw Alan, I remember actually distinct moment. Ronnie Scott's had a jazz guitar festival. No, it's not jazz guitar, a guitar festival. And this would have been October 1972, right? And I went down there, and so it was John Williams, Barney Kessel, and Alan somebody. And I walked in, and there was this guy standing there with a guitar. And at the time, there were, what had happened in jazz was, because of McLaughlin's success, all the jazz groups were trying to get hold of guitar players. And I have to tell you, most of these guitar players were pretty average, right? They were pretty average because the jazz guys didn't like guitar. They didn't really want it. They didn't know anything about it. They didn't know what was good or bad, unlike saxophones, where they all knew what was good or bad. So they all thought, we've got to have a guitar player because of McLaughlin and Miles and that. So they get the guitar player. So I walked in, and there's this guy with a long face and long hair standing there with this guitar. He looked kind of awkward, you know. And I thought, it's another of these jazz guitarists who can't really do it, you know. And then he started playing, you know. I went, what the fuck, you know, what the hell? And I just went, oh, bloody hell, who's this bloody bastard, you know? I thought, I can't believe this, you know, who is this, you know? Because it was like, he didn't have such a good sound at the time, but he was obviously much more serious than Ollie, and much more serious about what he was doing and where he was going. And it was amazing, you know, and it was like, wow. And then at the same time I was in Darrell Wade's Wolf, he was in John Heisman's Tempest. And both these albums came out, the records came out in around 1973. And he plays great on the Tempest album, but there again, he himself would say, I mean, there's, the sound, it's not the great sound. The thing about Ollie, he really did, in 1971, have a great sound. But the thing, Ollie Halsall just went like that, basically. And Alan, you know, he had lots of troubles and difficulties in his life, but he stuck. So he joined the Soft Machine, and he started. That was a kind of, the playing was another better than on Tempest, and then the Tony Williams thing where he used the overdrive and really got a good sound on that, and then so he really, you know, and that's what. To be a jazz name stylist, you really have to have a thing that you stick to.
Yeah.
And that's your temper. You know, you think of Pat Martino or Mike Stern or Schofield or Alan. They just always play pretty well the same. Now, personally, it just hasn't happened to me somehow. I do kind of play the same, but I think what happened to me was, when I was offered the Stephane Grappelli thing. Anyway, go back to Alan was in the Soft Machine, and I knew him, and so he gave them my number when he left, and it's very lucky he did, because I think they again were auditioning people from the jazz world. I was in the progressive rock world, right? They were in the jazz world, so they knew their jazz people, none of whom were suitable. I mean, Ollie Halsall did audition, but I mean, by then Ollie Halsall was, you know, he was a very eccentric character, much too eccentric to work with Carl Jenkins. No. Anyway, so
what did that mean for you when you got the gig with Soft Machine? I mean, because then you probably started playing and touring, right?
What was absolutely amazing was I saw them at the Rainbow Theatre in February 1975. Opposite Larry Coryell's 11th House.
Wow.
And it, you know, Alan was amazing, of course. And and a friend of mine, funny enough, not guitar player, because mainly the people I knew who were into the sort of Holdsworth thing were guitar players.
Sure.
But this friend of mine, he wasn't a guitar player, and he phoned me up and he said, have you heard this latest Soft Machine album, Bundles? I said, yeah. He said, oh, it's fantastic. It's bloody amazing. And he was always playing it to me. You see, I go, yeah, I've heard it. He's playing it to me. He goes, and so they phoned me up. I did the audition, and they said, yeah, fine, that's good. Yeah, we'll have you. And I phoned him up, and it was a wonderful moment. I said, hello, Dave. He said, man, how are you doing? I said, I've joined the Soft Machine. He went, what? What? Because he was this huge Soft Machine fan. He went, what? I don't believe it. I said, I have, mate. I'm not pulling your leg. But it was a tough gig because what happened, they'd recorded Bundles and Alan had left. So Bundles had to be promoted. Now, I think I've thought about this recently. This was my luck because their default position, like all jazz musicians, was the saxophone. They'd have gone back to the saxophone. They would have done if they hadn't had that album to promote. And I think they were just about giving up. They'd auditioned most of the guitarists on the scene and they hadn't found anybody satisfactory. And I think they were just about to give up and go and get a saxophone player.
Okay.
But they had this album to promote. So I came along and I played okay at the audition, and they went, well, that'll be, that'll do, that'll be fine, So we were able to promote the Bundles album, which of course I had to go and play all those solos for hours and hours and hours.
That's heavy.
So it was quite heavy actually. And what was heavy about it was that actually, because Alan being such a dominating figure, the rest of them had all stopped playing. So if I didn't do a sort of 10-minute guitar solo, the gig would be over.
Oh man, well, that's good for you. That's good development.
Well, no, not really, because there were a couple of times, I remember a couple of really awful times where I just didn't feel like it.
Oh, sure, yeah.
And it was just pretty grim. I mean, it was quite nerve-wracking. I mean, the first thing you've got to remember, this is 1970s. I mean, you're a young man. You don't remember what the 1970s were like, when men didn't talk to each other. Men didn't encourage each other. It was non-stop competition.
Oh, yeah.
And so, there was dead silence in the band. Nobody liked each other and nobody spoke. In fact, I got my habit of speaking from this. Sorry, man. From this. I got my habit of speaking from being in the Soft Machine. And excuse me a moment. Excuse me.
Oh, sure.
Sorry, man, I can't. What is that? Number 4. That's me. Oh, very nice. Thank you. Thank you, man. So I'm just taking a... Sorry, I was just in the middle of doing something. Is that for me or Doreen?
Doreen.
Yeah. Okay, I'll take it. Thank you, man. Thank you so much. Sorry, I was just...
No problem.
Yeah, thanks. Right. Okay, that's my postman. Oh, God. Yeah, so it was great, but it was very stressful because they didn't talk. They didn't like each other. There was a very bad atmosphere in the band. Wow. And so I started gibbering nervously. And it's interesting that everybody then decided I was the cheerful person and they liked me. It was the guest thing. People talk about when Billy Preston came in to guest with the Beatles. Mm-hmm. So there was, and I think it was George or something said immediately people started behaving better. So, I joined and they kind of, my job was to be cheerful and smiling. Anyway, we got on pretty well. I mean, there's an album out there's a live album out, British Tour 75. And it's me doing mostly that repertoire, some other stuff as well. And I'm not very happy with it, but I think if I'd been able to mix it, it's just with a 2-inch tape. Yeah. So I find a very edgy sound. But if I would have been able to mix the guitar sound, it's very, very fast. I mean, I'm playing incredibly fast. It's all picked, you see. So it sounds a little bit like... Yeah. Okay. So it was. I mean, it's probably lucky for me that I at that time I couldn't do the hammer. I spent so much time doing Django Reinhardt.
Yeah.
My right hand was very, very, very fast, and so it's like and the same thing on softs. You can hear that on the Softs album. You know, it's all picked, and it's all right on that album because there's a bit of room put in.
Yeah.
But the live one, I'd love to. I tried to. All they could do was remaster it. So I went to the mastering and I said, "Look, can you take a bit of the top off?" They said, well, we can't take my top off because that will take the top off the cymbals. So, but it's extremely fast. I mean, I think it's just nerves, and it's not drugs; it's nerves. I think it was nerves and sort of unnecessarily speedy. But never mind. I mean, some people really like it, so that's all right.
Oh man!
But the first album I liked was Alive and Well.
Oh yeah, the '78 one. Yeah.
No, that was the first time I was happy with my playing because there's a couple of tracks there, particularly Huffing, which I'd actually would play to people. If somebody said play, I'd go, all right, I'll play. I mean, Softs is overall a better album, but Alive and Well for my playing, that's the first time I thought, okay, I'd play that to somebody and go, yeah, I'm quite happy with that. And that's so I was 28, 29 before that happened. And before I played something that I was actually proud of, you know. And so then the band folded up, of course. In fact, the guitar I had on that track, SG Custom, was stolen the very same night we did the album.
Oh shit, man.
There you go, see? How about that? So we did that track. We did that was the recordings, and the guitar was stolen. So it was like, thank God we got this recording. And yeah, it was a disaster. In Montmartre, in Paris, and they just broke into the van, and why we left the guitars. Stupid. Yeah. Anyway, I really regretted that guitar, and I spent years
trying to find it.
It was a Type 2 Custom, and I spent years getting one back and redoing it exactly the same, and then I never played it. That's psychology for you. I had to get back what I'd lost. Once I'd got it, I put it in, still in my cupboard. Because they're not really very good guitars, actually, SGs. Not really.
Yeah, I'm not a fan also.
No, we've got a soft spot for them, but they're not very good, really. It was Gibson's half-hearted effort to make a solid guitar, because the Les Paul failed totally. That's why there are so few Les Pauls. That was a failure. So they made the SG, and it's not thick enough. It's only that thick.
Yeah.
And the neck falls off, and it doesn't balance. And
exactly.
So so having put it back together again, I didn't use it after that. But so anyway, so that was the Soft Machine, and then that sort of fizzled out around. Mainly, I think actually, I got this offer from out of the blue from Stephane Grappelli.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you, how did that happen? Since you were basically in this fusionish prog world, and then you go to Stephane. I mean,
I'll tell you how it happened. There are two things here that would be why I'd say I was totally different character from, say, somebody like Alan. Is first of all, I was totally in the Soft Machine. That was my band. That was it completely. I was playing what I played, and that was it. And I get a call out of the blue from Dudley, and I thought, who was Stephane Grappelli's guitar player? And I went, "What are you? Okay, hello, Diz." He went, "Oh, hello." I said, "Can I come round and see you?" And I went, "Well, yeah, okay." Came round, and I said, "What's going on?" He said, "Well, Soft Machine were on the on the television." That was very rare in those days.
Yeah, sure.
And Disley had been looking for a guitar player, and he met a friend on the street, a vibes player called Pete Shade, who I should pay tribute to. And Pete Shade said, "Oh, I heard this amazing guitarist on the telly last night," which was playing with a Soft Machine, for God's sake. But he didn't say, "Oh, well, he was playing rock and roll or something." He just said, "Oh, a fantastic guitar player. You should go and try him out." So Disley comes round and goes, "Right, well, we're looking for a guitar player to play with Stephane Grappelli. I said, now, the guy he had before was Ike Isaacs, a jazz guitarist called Ike Isaacs, who was a wonderful chord man.
Yeah.
No good with the single string, but very good chord man. Anyway, so I said, what's happened to Ike? He said, oh, no. Too many bald heads on the stage. What the hell's going on? Anyway, so we played a tune, and he said, oh, that's all right. You know, we played Sweet Georgia Brown. He said, oh, that'll do. Now come to Hamburg and do this television show with Stephane Grappelli. And if he likes you, well, you can join the band. And I said, well, I'm in the Soft Machine. He said, oh, a rock band? I'm offering you a job with Stephane Grappelli. Anyway, so I went to meet Grappelli, who, now, there again, you think about these things later. I think he really liked Ike Isaacs.
Mm.
And Diz not told Stephane that he'd sacked Ike Isaacs.
Wow.
So Stephane comes into the room. I think what happened was in the corridor outside the rehearsal room, he said, oh, by the way, Stephane, we've got a new young guitar player. Because he walked in and he wouldn't even look at me.
Oh, wow, shit.
Sat in the corner and wouldn't look at me. And so it all went quite badly for a bit. And then finally he looked at me and he said, let's play You Are the Sunshine of My Life, right? Okay. So we played that. And bear in mind, I didn't even have an acoustic guitar. I borrowed an acoustic guitar to go with this. I didn't play acoustic guitar at all. But I did have a nylon string guitar that I used to do when I was before the Clapton Hendricks thing, I used to do my Django stuff on this nylon string guitar. So I'd taken that as well as a steel string guitar I'd borrowed, a horrible steel string guitar I'd borrowed, because I wasn't really interested in joining Stephane Grappelli. I was very interested to meet him, you know, because I wanted to meet the violinist from Django Reinhardt. Sure. You know, it's like as if Mitch Mitchell has said, come and have a play. You know, you go because Mitch Mitchell played with Jimi Hendrix. I mean, Stephane Grappelli, obviously a great violinist, but I wasn't that interested. But I was obviously a Django Reinhardt fanatic and had always wanted to meet Stephane Grappelli, you know, always. So anyway, so I wasn't too disturbed by all this. And I picked up the nylon guitar and we played You Are the Sunshine of My Life. And he waved to me to do a solo. I hadn't done a solo. And he waved to me to do a solo. So I got in all my licks, as much as I could get in, 16 bars. And finally, he turned around to me. He goes, oh, I like it, baby. I like what you're doing there. I like that fast business. You do that. It's very good. It amuses the tourists.
Oh, my God.
And after that, he said, oh, I like him. He's a nice boy. So after that, he was great. You know, so I did 5 years with him. It was brilliant. But okay. So, you know, so we done that thing. And Stephane said he liked me. Then I said to Diz, look, but I can't join. I'm playing with the Soft Machine. He said, look. And the thing was with this Dudley character, when I said I couldn't join, he got more and more keen. It was like a woman saying, no, no, no. You know, it made him more keen. He said, I'm going to go and speak to your wife. I'm offering you a lot of money to do a world tour with Stephane Grappelli. And you're going to turn it down because you're playing in a rock band. You know. So I wasn't being hard to get. I just thought, I own Soft Machine. Soft Machine is my band. I'm in it. I'm a proper member now. I'm a part of this band. And this is the band I always wanted to be in. And I'm really, you know. And so I went to them and I said, well, how many gigs have you got? And they said, well, we haven't got many. And I said, well, look, I've been offered the 3-month tour with Stephane Grappelli. And John Marshall and Carl Jenkins said, well, go and do it. If we get any gigs in, we'll get Alan Holdsworth as the Dep. Because he was in and out of England, you know. So I went off to do 3 months. They did 1 gig in Portugal and Alan did it. But, and then these things always happen like that. The very last date of the Stephane Grappelli tour, July the 20th, 1977, Soft Machine had a gig at the Alexandra Palace. Alexandra Palace Festival headline Soft Machine. and it was the last day of the Stephane Grappelli tour. So I said to Carl Jenkins, I said, can't do it. We're going to. Alan was back in America. I said, I don't know. I can't. Can't you get saxophone? He said, no, we can't get saxophone. I said, but I'm contracted to play Stephane Grappelli. So my head was going. And finally, through some Machiavellian machinations, the manager of Stephane Grappelli said, I know. There was another guitar player called Denny Wright, and Dudley owed him £100, right? And this had been going on for years. And so the manager said, why don't you invite Denny Wright to do the last concert with Stephane Grappelli? Because Dudley, because when I went to Dudley and said, look, I've got to play with the soft machine, he said, you have a contract to play with Stephane Grappelli on that day, you know. So it was like, what am I going to do? Okay. So the manager went to Dudley and said, Denny Wright owes you, you owe Denny Wright £100, and he's always threatening to take you to court. Why don't you phone him up and say, Denny, come and play a gig with Stephane, and let's forget about the £100.
What a...
And he did it. So that happened. Luckily, honestly, I can remember the relief. I was going mad. I remember I was screaming down the phone at Carl Jenkins saying, I can't cope. I'm leaving the music business. This is hopeless. I just can't cope. My head's coming off. You know, because I just couldn't see any way out. There was no way out. Anyway, so that was the thing. Anyway, so then we did the Alive and Well album. And we did a great gig at Hammersmith Palais. It was fantastic. Really, really was a good gig. And it seemed like it's quite often happened in those days with Soft Machine. We do a really good gig and everybody think, right, we're going somewhere now. And then nothing would happen.
Yeah.
So I carried on with Grappelli, you know. And then Alan offered me the Bill Bruford gig, which I kind of wish I'd done, but Alan was very pessimistic about it.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And he phoned me up and said, oh, do you want to do this gig with Bill? And I was touring with Grappelli, and it was, I would have, at the time, I didn't think you could be in two bands at once, you see. So I had a long talk with Bill, and I said, well, you know, I probably could have done it, actually, but it was on the way down anyway. They'd done 2 albums.
Yeah.
And so, you know, and also I thought my mum would be the, you know, my shtick in life is going to be the guy who follows Alan Holdsworth into gigs, you know. So I thought I wasn't, you know, but later on, when I finished with Grappelli, I was thinking, oh God, it would have been really nice to have met Jeff Berlin and all that. And, but, you know, it wasn't a problem. No, these things happen in life at all. I mean, second day I joined Soft Machine, Peter Gabriel phoned me up.
Really?
Peter Gabriel phoned me up and said, yeah. He said, oh, I've left Genesis, I'm forming a band. And I said, well, I'm just joined the Soft Machine. I mean, if he'd phoned up 3 days earlier, I'd have, well, I mean, I much prefer to have been in the Soft Machine. And I wouldn't have
it's funny, these things, how it would have gone a different path. Yeah.
Well, I only got in the Soft Machine because I was hanging around in a guitar shop and Alan walked in and we were chatting and he took my number, and then a couple of weeks later he left. So that's how these things happen, you know. And
that's amazing.
And the Grappelli thing happened because of the Soft Machine, and so you know it's. And then later playing with people like Nigel Kennedy, that happened because of Stephane Grappelli, because Stephane Grappelli used to come and play with Nigel Kennedy used to come and play with Stephane Grappelli, and I was there, and so these things all. Happen. And John Williams as well, because basically we're neighbours. You know,
really?
And when John was looking for, you know, people think that none of this matters. I mean, I know perfectly well from Andy Summers, who I've known forever.
Yeah.
That he used to get a lot of film work. Because he was in Los Angeles, and you know the producers' kids would be at the same school as his kids and things like that. That's how things work, you know. That's why, you know, particularly in that era, the 70s and 80s, if you wanted to be make it, you had to be in America.
Sure. Yep.
I mean, Alan had to go to America because Gary Husband told me that it was so desperate, because there was certainly no fusion market. There was no fusion market in Britain.
Mm.
I mean, I had fusiony bands and we did okay, but when Stephane Grappelli died, and I thought, I really love that man, I really want to do something for him, and I sort of formed a band, sort of kind of tribute to him. I mean, for the first 3 or 4 years, we never stopped working in England. I mean, wow. Everybody wanted us, because I'm afraid that's bloody England for you, Brexit England. So Gary told me that Alan and that IOU band it was going so badly. So Alan went to America, and if it hadn't been for that, he'd have just, I don't know what would have happened.
Different story.
But with me, I didn't want to go. People said, "Oh, you should go to America." This was in the early '80s, and I thought, and I had my kids. I was divorced, but I had my kids, and I thought, I don't think I could live. I don't think I could have lived, and I don't think Alan was happy living in America, even though he's half American, because his father was an American. His biological father.
Yeah.
So I used to say things to me about what it was like living there, and it was like, he said that he just felt outside, and he does, you spend time, it's another culture. It's a really different culture. Yeah. I mean, really is. If you're an American, you're used to it. But so at the time, I thought maybe it's something I should have done, but now I'm glad I didn't.
Definitely.
But
I mean,
probably, I've probably survived here and done okay through being more diverse. I mean, I'd have liked to have stuck to that jazz fusion soft machine. Well, that's really me. I mean, to get back to the point, when we're playing with soft machine, I really feel that's me. And a friend of mine, a singer I work with, she came down and saw us, and she said, "Oh, it's totally you. That's you, because I do a duet with a great singer called Vima Leroux. And of course, I like to be an accompanist, and I like to, and I'm okay at it, I think. And we have a really nice duo, and it's very challenging to accompany a singer. And
definitely.
But she came down and saw the old soft machine thing, and she said, "Oh, that's it. That's you. You're up there. That's you." And also it's my youth. It's my youth. I've got a theory that when you get old, I've noticed this with Pat Metheny's. Pat Metheny's sound is getting more and more like a jazz guitar sound, like Wes Montgomery, where he grew up.
Yeah.
Not copying Wes Montgomery. No, it's getting more. And me, I'm getting more and more kind of fusiony, Clapton-y, fusiony, and it's more and more what I want to play, as I fade away, fade away.
Oh,
fade away doing hazard profile, fading away.
What I heard, from Soft Machine, these gigs that are some on YouTube, man, you're killing. You're just like, no, they're great, aren't they? And your lines are like,
I really like them.
Woof.
Yeah, I like them. Yeah, I'm really, very, very. I mean, you don't know. I mean, I don't want to sound pessimistic, but you never know when you get to a certain age how long, how long you've got. But at the moment, I mean, the baked potato. I mean, some of the YouTube clips, and the baked potato.
Baked potato is killing. That's.
Yeah. I loved it.
Yeah. That's amazing.
And I'm very, very kind of. I mean, for years, I could tell you something, between 1980 and I think 1990, I refused to listen to myself on any level at all.
Oh, wow.
Sometimes people would say, I've got a live tape, and I couldn't bear it. And I thought, I don't like my playing. If I hear myself, I'll just get more and more depressed. So
it's like a Alan Holdsworth attitude.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Totally. totally. And I thought I can play. I'm going to do gigs and things, and I wouldn't record. I couldn't record,
wow.
and I couldn't record. I was psychologically incapable, and I found a book about guitar players, came out around 96, 97, something like that. So, or is it, no, sorry, 80s. No, wait a minute, let me get my decades right. Sometime, probably early 90s, something like that. And so it was a long time since I've been in the Soft Machine. There was an entry about me. They just finished at the Soft Machine. And I thought, in those days particularly, if you don't record, you don't exist.
Yeah,
I was doing thousands of gigs, thousands and thousands of gigs. And I was always very happy playing live because it's gone. In those days, it's completely gone. You know, you play a gig, it's gone. So I really liked that. And then I thought, I don't exist. I've got to make a record. So I sort of held my nose. I thought, I've got to do this. And the only way I can do this is if I play and I have a quick listen and I think that's okay. I'll let it go. I'll think of it as a gig. I'll let it go. So I recorded an album called Ash, which is quite a nice album.
Yeah.
Do you know that album Ash? Have you?
No,
and then,
no, shit, I have to find it.
Oh, well, that was my first solo album, and it was came out on some tiny label somewhere, and actually it's good. I like it now, you know, and it got put down at the time. It was interesting how times change. At the time when it came out in, oh God, it must be 88. That's right, 80s. God, I'm getting my decades muddled up. This is terrible. About 88, it came out, and people weren't into eclecticism then.
Yeah.
So it's got. I wouldn't say got a lot of different styles, but there's some straight ahead jazz on it. There's some really quite burning fusiony stuff. Oh, and years later, it was praised for being broad, but at the time, it was like, I remember the review saying, he can't decide if he's rock or jazz. What is it?
Yeah. Okay.
So classic, but down the tube, you know, down there. Anyway, so that at least got me kind of over my inability but you know, now I'm quite happy to listen to myself. And some of those Soft Machine things, I think, oh, I'm happy with that. I'm already working out what's going to be played at my funeral, Samo. And I think that version of Hazard Profile from the Baked Potato, I'll have somebody play that, because I listened to that, and I was listening with some friends, and I thought, you know, that's not bad. Whereas normally when you're listening with friends, you're going, oh, yeah. I mean, I remember Alan, occasionally Alan would play me something and he'd talk over a bit. Or I remember once he said, I'm quite pleased with this solo, he said, and he played it to me. But when he played it to me, he left the room and then came back when it was finished. And then I went, great, you know, because it's really tough, you know. But anyway, so I'm glad you, because I really I do enjoy what we're doing there. And as I say, hopefully it'll carry on. You know, guitar's not too unkind. I mean, if you for instance, I don't know if you've seen the YouTube. There's a YouTube clip with me and Stephane Grappelli from the Albert Hall about 1978, and it's acoustic guitar. And there again, it's. I mean, I'm not saying it's great musically, but it's so fast, and I'm going, bloody hell! I don't think I could do that anymore, because I've actually just not deliberately. I've just found myself playing with a bit more legato.
Legato, yeah, I noticed that. Yeah, I love that. What you do now, like
I didn't use any legato before.
Yeah, sure.
Not because I didn't want to, just because my right hand always followed my left hand. They all went together, so I began, you know, kind of Al Di Meola-ish, but not Al. Yeah. I mean, certainly wasn't copying Al Di Meola. But so if you check that out on, you know, it's yeah, you just put John Etheridge, Stephane Grappelli in YouTube, and it's there. Me on an ovation, and but the point is, I think you know, it's about like, you know, because the legato really helps you when you're getting a bit older.
Oh. No, but it's beautiful. Like
Turn
it's
the gain up.
more horn-like and more. I don't know.
It's better. I prefer it. I much prefer.
Me too.
I mean, but I couldn't do it. So I developed this really soft picking method. But I mean, I'm glad I couldn't do it because I would have sounded like I was trying to copy Alan. So it in a way, if you listen to like Soft and Alive and Well, it doesn't really sound like him, which is good.
Yep. Which
is good but I would have liked to sound like him, but I just couldn't do it. I mean, when I heard it, I thought those guys, Ollie Halsall and Alan, I thought, I've been doing this, such hard work, you know, trying to coordinate. I mean, the problem with you know, fast picking people is that you spend so much effort getting the coordination that quite often the music goes out the window. I mean, that was certainly the case with, I think, McLaughlin and the viola.
Well, listen to the guitar San Francisco with Paco. You know, that trio.
Yeah, exactly.
When I was 17, I loved
it.
Now I'm like, oh man, I cannot listen to it. It's just like you know, like
no, exactly. It's exactly right, and of course, exactly right. And you're working so hard on that coordination that you forget about. And the beauty of that sort of legato thing is that really, you know, it's easier on the chops thing. So therefore, you can focus more on the music.
Definitely, yeah, definitely.
So, you know, but that's but it's not conscious. I mean, the best things aren't really conscious. It's the same thing with, I mean, when I first met Alan, he was totally hung up about not being able to pick because he got grief. He came down to London and the resident jazz guitarist all told him he was cheating. I remember talking about it to Rodney Jones in Dizzy Gillespie's band because Dizzy Gillespie Quartet and Stephane Grappelli Quartet used to tour around together. And I got very pally with Rodney Jones, who was, you've probably not heard of him because he didn't go on
Rodney. I did an interview with Rodney. He's fantastic. Yeah.
Oh, you know Rodney?
Yeah, sure.
As soon as I mentioned Holsworth, he goes, "That's not legit."
Yeah, he's other school.
Yeah, because
Benson kind of.
Yeah, old school. And they, Benson. Yeah. So he's a great player. We used to do a lot together. He was a real gunslinger. Rodney and I used to gunsling at each other.
Oh man, that's
beautiful. Man. We'd sort of meet in the hotel, you know. We do the festival circuit, you know, Grappelli and Gillespie. And I'd see Rodney, he'd unhook his guitar and go, right.
Oh, man.
We'd sit there going,
oh man, that's amazing.
He was a real competitive guitar player.
Yeah.
I kind of had, you know, we really, I'm glad.
That's it.
I'm great that you've interviewed Rodney because he was great, you know. And I remember he turned up once. He's a fantastic player, and he turned up once in London, and he was playing with his thumb, and he was going. And I went to see him with Jim Mullen, who plays with his thumb.
Yeah.
And I said, Jimmy's going up and down with the thumb, and he went, "No, he's not." I said, "He is. He's going up and down with the thumb." And Rodney did go up and down with the thumb, but he's gone back to the pick, I think.
Yeah.
Great musician,
beautiful player,
and wonderful guy. And so we were quite proud. He's younger than me, actually. He was a real kid then. And so we used to do all these things. Anyway, to get back to the Alan thing, it was like he got a lot of grief. And so he worked on his picking. He said, I really tried to pick everything, you know, and I really, really gave it, you know. And he said, then I heard a tape of myself. And I thought, well, why am I bothering? Because it sounded, you know, he realized that what you were doing sounded great, but he got completely paranoid about it. Yeah, because they got on his case. Terry Smith, all the jazz guitarists in London were going, because he went onto that jazz scene. He was on the jazz scene. Just because he knew Ray Worley and Pat Smythe, these people, you know, so he played with them. And so, you know, the other guitarists were going, that's not right. You're not doing it right. That's not right. That's not, you know, that's not like Reinhardt or Charlie Christian. So he got really a lot of, you know, he got very paranoid, got very depressed. And then finally decided that, you know, what he was doing was okay. And he got encouragement from a lot of people. And that was, you know, that's it, you know. But you stick to your guns because you have to. I mean, the thing is, if you're the other kind of person, like say Borelli Legrand, who can play anything, or Guthrie Govan, or somebody who can play anything, then people get on your case and you go, all right, and then you learn to pick.
Exactly.
You know, but you know, if you're what you know, like you are what you are, and you're that kind of character who's self-generating, then you either collapse or you power through, and he powered through, you know, which is great, very brave, really. Because, well, you know, he had no choice. He couldn't. You do what you can. It's all about survival.
Yeah.
And you realise that you're a certain character, and you go with it. Yeah. And that's what everybody does. And so that's why there's no. And music is such a huge universe. That's why there's no right and wrong, and no, you know, we admire everybody. I mean, I was never a good session musician. My reading is not good enough. There are holes in my, and you know, I'm so self-taught. But I also, at the same time, if we're talking about the early 70s, I had a friend that we used to jam with, and he became the country's top session musician, a guy called Mitch Dalton. And he just had a natural inclination for that. He had no particular style or way of playing. He became a very good reader. Yeah. He was very quick, very acute, good, very important, very good rhythm and sense of time. And he made a fortune as a session man. Yeah. But when we were playing together as teenagers or in our early 20s, he wasn't saying, I want to be a session man. It just happened.
Yeah.
And this is what happens. You start doing something, you get asked to do it again, and you're asked to do it more, and you're asked to do it more, you're asked to do it more. And now that happened to me with playing live. It never happened to me with sessions. Friends of mine would say, I'll get you some sessions. So I'd do a session, be okay. Then I might get another one of you. But it never exploded. And for somebody like that. So, you know, it's just character. It really is. And he had no real, he wanted to be a really good guitarist like me. We just play together and we play our Joe Pass tunes or whatever we'd play, Django tunes. And he wanted to be, like me, the best guitarist he could be. And then suddenly, not suddenly, gradually he becomes the #1 session guy.
Yeah.
And you know, this is a guy, nobody knows your name, but everybody's heard you every day of their lives because you're on every record.
Yeah. There are so many guys like that. Yeah. There are so many guys like that. No one knows them. Yeah.
It's the antithesis world, really. The jazz stylist and the session musician.
Yeah.
Because to be a jazz name, you must have a recognizable sound. Yeah. But to be a session man, you mustn't have a recognizable sound. It's wrong.
Yeah.
But have no sound. You've got to say, let's. In fact, Mitch, a very humorous guy. I was doing one of the rare sessions. I was doing a film session, and I was playing a sort of Django-y type lead guitar thing all the way through. And at one point, the composer said, "Why don't we have a Mitch Dalton solo?" No, why don't you do a solo? Okay. And Mitch went, what? Jazz, blues, folk, rock?
Yeah, exactly.
Said, no, Mitch Dalton. And so Mitch went, who's he? Who's that? Yeah. It was very humorous. The bloke said, no, I want a Mitch Dalton solo. He went, who's that?
That's probably true, actually.
I think that's really,
like
really,
whatever. Yeah. Amazing, man.
Yeah. Well, no, I mean, he could play anything, and a brilliant musician, you know, who could do anything. But it's the opposite of being the jazz man. Yeah. I mean, if you said to John Scofield, you know, I want you to play like Albert Lee, go, what? No, exactly. I can't play like Albert Lee. But Borelli, of course, well, he can't read or anything. I'm something like Borelli. He can play anything. Yeah. I did a tour with Borelli. I had an electric guitar. He picked up my electric guitar and just played like Holdsworth, you know, just like that, straight off. Man. I'm going, wow, you can do anything. Really can do anything. You know? And Guthrie Govan's another one. He can do anything. You know,
he's incredible.
These guys do anything. So I'm a bit in between. I could do quite a lot, but I think hopefully I've always got my own way of being and playing. and which kind of comes through stuff. But so I'm in between. But I didn't really want to be a session man. I mean, it's too stressful. It's very, very stressful. You know, the point is you're being told what to do. Samo, pick up your guitar and play like this. And here's the part. You know, the clock's ticking away, and they write out a part and go, "Oh, guitar player can." Yeah.
The creativity is missing, I think. Yeah, it's more.
Yeah, but also the stress on the nerves. You know, I mean, I couldn't get anywhere near it now. Yeah. I'm very glad to be doing what I'm doing. You know.
Oh man, but you're probably the only guy who played like Soft Machine, John Williams, and Stephane Grappelli. That's like, you know, with these.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
I don't think there's a guitarist or player.
Isn't it weird?
Yeah, it's really like
no. It's very weird. And you know, they're parallel worlds and they don't marry up. People who know about the Soft Machine don't know about John Williams.
Oh, exactly.
So that's my thing. I would rather like it if somebody like you could say he does all these things, you know, because I think that I mean, I'm not taking huge credit for it. It's just to go back to that point about Stephane Grappelli. I think a lot of people would say, no, I can't do that. But and same thing with John Williams. When John Williams asked me to do something, I went, I can't play with John Williams. You're the world's greatest classical guitarist. How can I play with you? And instead of going, I just pushed through the anxiety, see, and thought, well, okay. And then when I got to play with him, he had a very clear picture of what he wanted me to do. In fact, he wanted me to be myself and him to be himself and come together. But when he first mentioned it, I thought, he doesn't think I can play classical duets with him, does he? Does he think I can read all this stuff? You know, I mean, the reading is a bit embarrassing with John, because John can read anything, you know, straight off like a pianist. You know, you just put the music in front of him and he reads it. I have to work really hard. And I mean, when we first formed the duo, a very talented guy, Ben Verdry, wrote a very contemporary piece for us, which involved a lot of quite random sounding things from me, but of course they're not random because they're all written out. It took me so long to get it in my head. John just opens the thing and goes,
yeah, that's scary.
So jealous making. You know, I've really tried to work on my reading, but I just don't work on it enough. And I don't know about you. I don't know what's your reading. If you're reading,
I mean, I can read, but like compared to like, I know what you mean. Compared to, you know, I did a tour like years ago with two saxophone players from New York, John O'Gallagher and Lawrence Tillman.
Oh God!
And
I
wrote
reading
like,
would be ridiculous.
Man, I wrote like compositions, like, you know, 7 pages, and they were all odd meters, and like, you know, I wrote lines like, and we had a first rehearsal in Switzerland, in Zurich, and I said like, well, let's do this tune. Should we do it slower? You know, and those two guys said, no, it's okay. I counted off like 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. We play like 7 minutes. They improvise, and I was like, oh fuck, man, that. You know, I could never do that. Seriously, I need to. You know,
you need to practice.
I mean, I need to check out my favorites. I can read like a lead sheet, but not like really intricate 11, 13, whatever.
No, you're probably. I'm probably a little bit behind you, but most guitarists are about that level. I mean, you get people like Alan that don't read at all, or Pirelli, or Jim Mullen doesn't read at all, or. A lot of the young people read quite well, but I don't think anybody reads like those saxophone players read like unbelievable. There's only one line. Yeah, only one line and one place.
But still, I mean,
still it's incredible, isn't it?
Yeah.
Well, I remember doing a tour with Nigel Kennedy and a piano accompanist. This was called Bartok to Hendrix. So they'd play some Bartok duets. Honestly, man, you should see. You want to see the music. You think your music looked complicated? See some Bartok music.
Yeah, I know.
Okay.
Sure.
Yeah, of course you do. Of course you do. But I mean, they play this stuff, and then he turned to me and the bass player, and we do some Hendrix. And at one point, he said to the pianist, this guy called John Lenihan, one of the world's great accompanists, and he said, "Here, John, we're going to play Honeysuckle Rose, and you're going to do a solo." Well, honestly, it was like us in reverse. You know, put music in front of me, I'm like the rabbit in the headlights. Oh my God, music! Oh my God, you know. And this guy was exactly the opposite. As soon as he had to do 132 bars on Honeysuckle Rose, he was like, hyperventilating, ready.
Sure.
And when he got through it, he went. The whole audience went mad because they could hear his
Relief,
they could feel his relief. You know, so it's just incredible. You know, I mean, I've got, you know, John is a fantastic reader, of course. Well, John Williams has no holes, no gaps at all.
Yeah. Up there.
Yeah. Anyway, Sam, how long do you want to carry on for?
Yeah, I mean, I just wanted to say that I think I go teach in 1 hour, so I still have to eat lunch. So, but I would love to listen to you.
Yes.
Man, you should come to Slovenia one day here. We have a guest.
Oh, I'd love to, man.
Man, really,
you know,
come here for a week and we'll play and hang and drink wine and eat food. So just really so nice to listen to you. You sound wonderful and
great,
man.
Yeah, well, no, it's great that you're interested, and I do like this thing about. That's really nice that you kind of people notice. I remember actually, funny enough, when I did a festival once, and I played with Stephane Grappelli, and then I played with my own fusion band called Second Vision, which actually is a nice album you should check out.
Oh yeah,
if you haven't.
No.
Second Vision, First Steps. It's a good classic for me. This always happens with me. I do an album, I think it's really good, and either the band splits up or and this one, the music press were on strike, and of course the music press in those days were very important. There was no newspaper, so it never got reviewed.
Oh shit, man!
And it's a really good album. Anyway, festival. So I played with Stephane Grappelli. Then I played with this fusion band. Well, call it fusion. I don't like the word, but
sure, I know what
do you want to call it? A couple in the audience. Woo, that's the same guy. Only a few. Wasn't he playing with? He was with Stephane Grappelli. Because they're so different, and people don't, you know. In the John Williams world, I mean, I had a great time doing duos with John Williams. It was so lovely because he's a fantastic guy. He's unbelievable, you know, guitarist. I mean, I can never be conceited about my playing ever because I played with people like that. I mean, it's just, well, I know it's a completely different world.
Yeah, no,
but his detail, his attention to detail, and the sound that comes out of his guitar. When you hardly see his fingers move, it's incredible. It's just incredible. And so, I mean, I sort of have to hold my breath and think I mustn't be overawed by this. But I had a wonderful time because we go to these classical guitar festivals, and I was just a curiosity. No pressure on me at all.
It's him.
And they'd all, and of course, you do a bit of improvising. They're all going, "Oh, wow!"
Exactly.
Oh gosh, they're all really impressed. And so we actually, the nearest to you, we did the Belgrade Guitar Festival about 12, 13 years ago, something like that. Anna Vidovic was there, and everybody was there. Pepe Romero, all the classical guitar players were there, and it was me and me, the steel string plectrum pick guy. So that they no stress on me at all. No competition, no peer pressure. So it was lovely. And John, of course, it's like being with John Williams in the classical guitar world. It's like being with Jimi Hendrix.
Oh, sure, man.
It's like, they're so in awe. Yeah, absolutely. So, oh, you're with John. Well, you must be amazing, So it was wonderful. We had a wonderful time for about 6-7 years. Doing these gigs, and we had a nice show. And we're playing again in September. Actually, first time for about 5 years.
Oh wow, man! Beautiful.
And I'm really looking forward to that. But it's such a different world. Because he's very kind to me. Because his level of precision. I mean, it's so intense.
Yeah.
And he understands that my level of precision is, not quite.
It's different. Different.
In fact, I must say, of course it is. It's a different thing. I mean, I don't know if you've ever done classical guitar, but during the lockdown, I thought I'm going to work on my classical guitar, right? So I get a piece, and I get it to about 95%. And I think, well, that's all right. But to get it to that level where it's absolutely perfect, I just couldn't be bothered. You know, I just thought, well, I know it now.
Right?
I know the piece.
Yeah, you're an improviser, and then you want to go somewhere else. I'm the same.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And John, he's very almost proud. He always says, "I don't improvise," and he doesn't. He is a meticulous planner in life and in music. And of course, it means that, and you know, you can, when he's playing, you can stop that guy, go stop, and he'll tell you exactly why that finger is doing that, why that finger is doing that, why that finger is doing that.
That's scary. Yeah.
Like, as I said to you, I don't know why I used to pick every note. I just did. And Alan probably would have tried to pick every note, but didn't. You know, and same thing with Pat Metheny. I mean, I did a bit of playing with Pat, who I know quite well. You know.
Oh, really?
And
wow.
Yeah. And he I said to him, what are you doing? What are you picking? What are you hammering? He goes, I don't know, man. Now that is, John Williams would never say that.
Exactly. Yeah.
You know, because you know Pat Metheny's technique. I mean, how does it work? It's like magic.
Yeah.
I mean, Alan, you can kind of figure it out, but Pat, how you work out Pat Metheny's technique? You know, a lot of it he's not even hammering, or he's just tapping the string. You know, things like that. Things he's worked out, and it's the same thing. It's that powerful brain saying, "I will play these notes by hook or by crook. Even my right and left hand won't do the normal chord." Because I mean, I remember when I first met him, he said, "Oh man, all I wanted to do was play Turkey at 300 BPM, but my picking was shit, so I had to work out another way of doing it." So he had to work out.
Yeah.
And of course, it ends up with just like Alan, with a unique style, you know, because he does it his way.
Exactly. Yeah.
I mean,
all these guys.
Those are those kind of guys. I mean, Pat Metheny is stratospheric in the sense that he's really broad as well.
Yeah.
I mean, it's almost like the preeminent person, if you like. I mean, you've got a guitar style that's recognizable. You also play in other ways, but you've always got your signature style. Yeah. Then you write all this music that is way beyond the guitar, you know. So I mean, he's just unbelievable. It's another level, really. Yeah. It's another level from us. We're guitar players, and we play, and we like to tune.
Come on.
No. I'm not putting myself down. I'm not putting myself down.
But I know what you mean. He's a hyperactive. He plays
exactly
600 days a year, I think, or something like that.
I know, he's absolutely workaholic, and you know, he never stops.
Yeah.
I sat with that guy, and he's always playing.
I've heard that. Yeah.
You know, when you're talking, he's playing, and it's just amazingly workaholic. Well, that's great.
Yeah,
it's fantastic. But we always have to be. My last words to everybody, anybody who listens to this, we all end up being ourselves, and we should be happy with ourselves. You know. So to get back to the point, say someone like Alan beating himself up when he's young because he doesn't play like everybody else. I might be beating up myself up because I haven't got a total style that makes me unique. So we're all beating ourselves up for some reason. And then get to a point you say, well, actually, I am what I am, and that has value to me, and hopefully value to people. Yeah. And so we're all living in this great big musical universe, and there's room for everybody.
Oh man, sure.
And we can enjoy and admire everybody.
Yeah. No,
and I'm interested in every guitar player that lives. I absolutely, really, I love. Very rarely do I hear a guitar player and get nothing from it. I mean, I just love hearing guitar players.
Yeah.
And I can probably count on fingers of one hand when I've heard a guitar player and got nothing from it at all. Very, very rare. I mean, I just love everybody. No, I don't just love them all equally. But
that's what I mean.
Yeah, you hear somebody, don't you? And you go, cool, that's good. That's good there. That's good what he's doing there.
Yeah.
Even Noel Gallagher or something.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sure. Absolutely.
Yeah.
One.
Anyway, okay, Samo, lovely, man.
John, man, thanks so much. I'll let you know when this is out, and I'll send you a link and everything.
Yes,
so.
please.